I found a detailed story prompt in the files. Would you like me to craft a compelling Reddit-style story topic line based on that content, including the unexpected twists and specific figures of money? Hello everyone. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Now, let's begin the video. Using a throwaway for obvious reasons with certain specifics modified to preserve anonymity. I never thought I'd find myself in a situation like this, but here I am, having discovered that my wife Emily was cheating on me. The shocking part, it all started with something so small I almost missed it. Her changing her phone password, acting secretive, and suddenly being way more interested in her phone than she ever used to be. We'd been married for 8 years, and honestly, I thought things were solid. We had our ups and downs, sure, but I believed we were in a good place. That was until I noticed her spending a lot more time on her phone, sneaking around, and lying about where she was going or who she was talking to. It all came to a head one night when I came home early from work. I'd been feeling a little off, so I decided to surprise her and see what she was up to. I caught her in the act. She was in our bedroom, not just texting, but actively engaged in some kind of video chat. Her face lit up with this mischievous grin, and I saw someone else on the screen. At first, I thought maybe it was just a friend, but then I saw her touch her hair, laugh at something he said, and I realized it went way beyond innocent. My heart sank. I felt this mix of anger and disbelief hit me like a freight train. How long had this been going on? Was this the reason she'd been so distant lately? I didn't say a word at first. I just stood there watching her, trying to process what I was seeing. When she finally saw me, she froze, then quickly pulled her phone away and tried to brush it off with her typical bitchy attitude. "Oh, it's nothing, just some work thing," she snapped, rolling her eyes. "Yeah, right, I knew better." Her tone was defensive, almost like she was angry I'd caught her, but I also sensed she was trying to hide something big. I started digging through her messages the next day. What I found was worse than I expected. There were dozens of texts, explicit conversations, pictures, and even plans to meet up. It wasn't just a fling, it was a full-blown affair. The guy's name was Jake, and he was someone she'd met at her yoga class. She'd been sneaking around behind my back for months, apparently. The worst part, she lied about everything, insisted it was just sex, like that made it okay. She called him her secret, and when I confronted her about it, she looked at me with this condescending smirk and said, "You're overreacting, it's just sex. It doesn't mean anything." That's when I realized she had no remorse, no shame, just this bitchy attitude that she was somehow above it all. She threw in some classic lies too, claiming she'd only been with him a couple of times, that it was meaningless, that I was just paranoid. But I knew better. I saw the receipts, the photos, the texts. She'd even spent over $500 on gifts for him in the last month alone, and her bank statements confirmed it. She'd been funneling money into secret accounts, buying him things, paying for dinners. I felt like my whole world was crashing down around me, and all I could think about was how she had betrayed me, lied to my face, and made a fool out of me for months. I was furious, but mostly hurt. I never thought Emily, the woman I married, would turn into this manipulative, lying bitch. I started planning what to do next, trying to keep my emotions in check. I knew I couldn't just confront her without a plan. I needed evidence, a way to make her see that I wasn't going to let this slide. I also started thinking about the money she'd been wasting on this guy, how she'd been draining our savings, secretly siphoning cash, and using my trust against me. It all felt like a punch to the gut. I'd worked so hard for our life, and now I was faced with the reality that my wife had been cheating on me, lying, and spending money like it was nothing. I didn't know what the future held, but one thing was clear: this wasn't going to end quietly. After I found all the evidence, I couldn't sleep that night. My brain kept circling around the same questions. How long had she been doing this? Was I blind all along? Did I miss the signs? The more I thought about it, the angrier I got. Emily had always been sharp, bitchy when she didn't get her way, and she had this way of making me feel like I was crazy if I ever questioned her. But now I saw how deep her lies went. She made me the fool, and I felt sick about it. The next morning, I decided I couldn't just sit there and do nothing. I needed to confront her, face her head on. I remember walking into the bedroom, phone in hand, and catching her in the act again. This time she was texting him while lying in bed, pretending to be asleep. I felt this surge of adrenaline that I'd never experienced before. I didn't yell right away. Instead, I sat down on the bed, looked her in the eyes, and said, "We need to talk. Now." Her face twisted into that bitchy, dismissive expression she always used when she thought she was better than everyone else. "What's there to talk about? You're overreacting like always," she snapped. I felt my blood pressure spike, but I stayed calm, at least outwardly. I pulled out the phone and showed her the evidence, texts, pictures, the bank statements. Her eyes widened for a moment, then she scoffed and rolled her eyes. "That's all bullshit. You're just jealous because I don't want to be bored in this marriage anymore. Jake's exciting. You're boring." I couldn't believe how she lied so effortlessly. She was so dismissive, so full of herself. I told her I'd had enough and that I was done with the lies. She kept denying everything, claiming I was crazy, that I was paranoid, that I was accusing her of something she didn't do. But I knew the truth. I'd seen the proof with my own eyes. My stomach was twisting, and I felt this mixture of anger, betrayal, and heartbreak. How could she just brush it off like it was nothing? Like her betrayal was just some minor mistake. She then threw out some classic excuses. She said she was unhappy, that I'd been neglecting her, that she needed excitement. She called me controlling, said I didn't listen, that she was entitled to have some fun. Her words stung worse than anything. It was like she was trying to justify her actions, make me feel guilty for catching her. But I wasn't buying it. I told her she had crossed a line and I wanted her out of the house. She laughed, that bitchy laugh that makes me so angry even now, and said she'd do what she wanted, that I couldn't control her. That was the moment I realized I had to take control myself. I couldn't let her keep lying and sneaking around. The betrayal was too deep, and I knew I couldn't just forgive and forget. I told her I was done, that I'd file for divorce if she didn't come clean and end it with Jake. Her reaction was surprising. She looked at me with this disdainful smirk, like she thought she was smarter than everyone else. "Go ahead, do whatever you want. You're too weak to stop me," she sneered. That's when I decided I needed to get serious. I started thinking about how to make her regret this, how to turn her own game against her. I wasn't just going to walk away. I wanted to make her pay for what she did. She spent thousands on Jake, lied to my face, and treated our marriage like a joke. I knew I needed to gather more proof, maybe even set a trap. But I also knew I couldn't trust her anymore. She was manipulative, bitchy, and she'd thrown away the last 8 years like they were nothing. In that moment, I felt the cold realization that I'd been a fool for so long. I'd given her everything, my love, my trust, my money, and she'd repaid me with lies and betrayal. It was a hard pill to swallow, but I was done being the naive husband. I decided I'd have to fight back, not just for myself, but to teach her that cheating and lying come with consequences. I didn't want her to think she could get away with this, not without paying a price. So I started planning my next move, knowing full well that things were only going to get more complicated from here. After that initial confrontation, I felt like I was walking around in a fog. My mind kept spinning with all the things I discovered, the money she'd secretly spent, the texts, the lies. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face smirking at me, dismissing everything as if I was just some clueless idiot. I knew I had to do something, but I also needed a plan. I couldn't just storm out and ruin everything without thinking it through. Over the next couple of days, I started digging deeper into her phone and bank accounts. I wanted to get a full picture of just how far she'd gone. I found receipts for gifts she bought Jake, luxury watches, designer clothes, even a $2, weekend trip she booked for just the two of them. She'd been funneling money into a secret account, one I didn't even know about. That's when I realized she'd been planning this for months, if not longer. She'd been sneaking around, lying, spending our savings, all while pretending to be the perfect wife. I also started noticing small things, her changing her schedule, avoiding me, acting more bitchy than usual. It was like she was trying to push me away, or maybe she was just feeling guilty but too arrogant to admit it. Whatever. The reason I saw through her. I decided I needed to set a trap, something to catch her in the act or prove she was lying. I wanted her to realize I wasn't just some pushover anymore. So I started acting like I didn't know. I kept quiet, acted normal around her, but I also kept tabs on her movements. I installed a hidden camera in the bedroom, just in case she tried to hide her phone or meet up with Jake again. I also made a fake bank account, transferring a small amount of money into it to see if she'd try to access it. The plan was to catch her red-handed or at least get undeniable proof of her ongoing affair. One evening, I was sitting in the living room when she came home early. She looked nervous, like she knew I was onto her. She tried to act casual, but I could see the flicker of guilt in her eyes. She immediately started trying to change the subject, making snide comments about how I was paranoid. I just looked at her and said, "Emily, I know everything. I know about Jake, about the money, about the lies. So don't bother denying it anymore." Her face fell for a second, then she snapped back with her usual attitude. "You're crazy, I don't know what you're talking about. You're just jealous because I'm finally having some fun for once." Her words made me furious, but I kept my composure. I told her I had all the proof I needed, that she could lie all she wanted, but it was over. I told her I was done being played for a fool. That night, I stayed up late, watching the footage from the hidden camera. It confirmed everything I already knew: her sneaking her phone, whispering with Jake, exchanging explicit messages. I saw her kiss him goodbye in the driveway, her hand lingering on his chest. That was the moment I knew I had to act fast. I couldn't let her keep lying and gaslighting me. I had enough evidence to make her regret everything. The next morning, I sat her down again. This time, I told her I was filing for divorce, that I wasn't going to be part of her game anymore. I told her I knew about the money she'd stolen, about her affair, and that I was done being her fool. She looked at me with that same bitchy smirk, like she thought she could manipulate her way out of it. She told me I was overreacting, that I was just insecure and controlling. But I wasn't listening anymore. I had made up my mind. I realized that I had to be strategic. I couldn't just confront her and expect her to admit everything. I needed to make her feel the consequences of her actions. I decided I'd lawyer up, get a hold of the evidence I had, and prepare for the worst. I knew she was manipulative, but I also knew I wasn't going to let her walk all over me. This was the beginning of a new chapter, one where I took control, no matter how much it hurt. I felt a strange mixture of relief and dread, knowing that from this moment on, nothing would be the same. After I made my decision to divorce her, I felt a strange mix of relief and anger. I'd spent days gathering evidence, planning my next moves, and now I was finally ready to confront her with everything laid out on the table. But I also knew Emily. She was cunning, and I couldn't just do this quietly. She'd fight, deny, lie her way out of it, and I had to be prepared for that. That afternoon, I contacted a lawyer I knew and trusted. I explained everything: her affair, the secret accounts, the money she'd been funneling to Jake, all the lies. I handed over all the evidence I had collected: screenshots of the texts, bank statements, the video footage from my hidden camera. My lawyer told me she'd handle the legal side, but I knew I had to be strategic myself. I couldn't just go in guns blazing. I had to make her realize she'd lost everything if she kept pushing me. I also decided to set a trap for her. I faked a business trip, telling her I was leaving for a week. In reality, I stayed home, monitoring everything. I wanted to catch her again in the act if possible. I also made sure to have a recording device hidden in the house, just in case she tried to say I was crazy or making things up. I was dead serious. I knew she'd try to manipulate the situation, spin stories, or even try turn the tables on me. I had to be ready. That evening she came home looking smug, as if she already thought she'd won. She was dressed provocatively, and her attitude was bitchy and dismissive. She started trying to brush past me like nothing was wrong, but I stood my ground, blocking her way. I told her I had something to say. I pulled out the evidence: the texts, the bank statements, the video footage on my phone. Her eyes widened, but she quickly recovered her bitchy smirk. "You're crazy," she said. "All of it's fake. You're just jealous because I'm finally having fun and you're too boring to keep me happy." She looked at me with this condescending glare, like I was some pathetic fool. I told her I wasn't going to listen to her lies anymore, that I knew everything and I was filing for divorce, that I had proof of her affair, her theft, her deception. Her face twisted into anger and she started yelling, calling me controlling and paranoid. She tried to deny everything, but I had her cornered. I told her she was done, that her manipulations wouldn't work anymore. I warned her that I was going to take everything. She'd lose access to our money, her lifestyle, her freedom. She snapped at me that I was just trying to ruin her, that she'd make my life miserable if I went through with this. But I wasn't afraid anymore. I'd already made up my mind. I told her I was done playing her game and I was going to make sure she paid for her betrayal. As she stormed out of the room, I felt this strange sense of clarity. I had all the power now, or at least I was about to. I knew she'd try to manipulate the situation, but I had the evidence and I had the legal backing. I also knew this wasn't just about the affair or the money. It was about respect, trust, and the fact that she'd lied to my face for months. I was tired of feeling like a fool, tired of her bitchy attitude, and tired of being her doormat. That night I stayed up late again, planning how to proceed. I contacted my lawyer to set a date for the divorce, and I started drafting a list of everything she'd taken or hidden. I was determined to get justice, even if it meant going through hell for a while. I also realized I'd need to protect myself emotionally. This was going to be a battle and I had to stay strong. I couldn't let her manipulate me anymore. I was done being the naive husband. From now on, I was going to fight for what was rightfully mine and for my own peace of mind. The days that followed were a blur of legal meetings, late-night planning, and trying to keep my temper in check. Emily, of course, was still acting like she was the victim, throwing tantrums, calling me controlling, accusing me of trying to ruin her life. But I didn't care anymore. I had everything laid out, proof of her affair, the stolen money, her secret accounts, and I knew I had the upper hand. Still, I had to be careful. Emily was manipulative, and I didn't want her to turn the situation into some drama where she played innocent and I looked like the villain. I kept my distance from her, acting like I was calm but ready to strike. I made sure all my evidence was well organized, stored securely, and ready to be used in court if needed. I also hired a private investigator to follow her around for a few days, just to confirm she was sticking to her story and not trying any last-minute cover-ups. What I found was exactly what I expected. She was still sneaking around with Jake, meeting him at some shady hotels, spending money like it was water. The receipts from her secret account confirmed it. Every time I saw those texts and pictures, my stomach clenched with anger. One afternoon, she came home furious, screaming that I was ruining her life, that I was trying to control her. She called me a jealous, insecure husband and said she'd make sure I paid for this. That's when I decided enough was enough. I told her I was serious about the divorce, that I had everything I needed to make her regret her choices. I warned her that if she kept this up, I'd go to court, push for full custody of the kids, and seize every penny she'd stolen or spent illegally. She then threw a tantrum trying to guilt-trip me. "You're just jealous," she spat. "You're boring and I needed someone exciting. Jake's better than you ever was." That comment made my blood boil. I looked her straight in the eye and said, "You want excitement, you got it, but it's going to cost you everything." She scoffed, but I knew I had her rattled. She realized I wasn't just some naive husband anymore. I was serious about ending this nightmare. That night I sat down and drafted the formal divorce papers. I also prepared a detailed financial report, listing every penny she'd stolen or spent on Jake. I knew I had her cornered, but I also knew she'd try to fight dirty, so I stayed vigilant. I contacted my lawyer again, finalized the timeline, and scheduled the court date. I felt a strange sense of empowerment but also exhaustion. This whole ordeal had drained me physically and emotionally. Still, I knew I had to see it through. In the quiet moments, I reflected on everything I'd been through, how I trusted her, how she betrayed me, and how I'd let her get away with so much for so long. But now I was done. I realized that I deserved better, that I shouldn't have tolerated her bitchy attitude, lies, and cheating. I also understood that money had played a huge role in her betrayal. She'd been draining our savings, buying Jake gifts, and secretly funneling cash into accounts she thought I wouldn't find. That realization made me more determined than ever to get justice, not just for myself but for my peace of mind. As I prepared for the final step, filing the divorce, I knew that everything was about to change. Emily could throw her tantrums, lie, cheat, and manipulate all she wanted. But I had the truth, and I had the power now. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but I was ready to reclaim my life. I owed myself that much. And deep down, I knew this was just the beginning of a new chapter, one where I finally took control and left the betrayal behind. The court date finally arrived, and I could feel the weight of everything I'd been through: months of betrayal, lies, stolen money, and the emotional toll of realizing I married someone I barely recognized anymore. Emily came in with her usual bitchy attitude, trying to act like she was the victim, but I saw through it. She was furious, desperate even, but her lies had no footing anymore. I had all the proof: screenshots, bank statements, her secret accounts, and the videos. She knew she was cornered. As the judge listened to both sides, I laid out everything: her affair with Jake, the money she'd spent, her manipulation, her lies. Emily tried to deny it all, but her voice trembled when I presented the evidence. I saw her get flustered, her confident smirk replaced by a look of panic. The judge was thorough, asking questions, reviewing the documents, and finally, it was clear she had no way out. The judge granted the divorce, awarded me full custody of the kids, and ordered her to pay back the stolen money plus fines for her illegal activities. When I left the courtroom, I felt this strange sense of relief, but also exhaustion. It was over. Emily's manipulations, her bitchy attitude, her betrayal, all of it was finally behind me. I didn't gloat or rub it in her face. I just walked away knowing I'd won, not just legally but emotionally. I realized I'd spent so long trying to protect my marriage, but she had made her choice, and now I was free to rebuild my life. In the weeks that followed, I moved out of the house, secured a new place, and started focusing on myself. I cut off all contact with Emily, knowing she'd only try to manipulate me again if I let her. I also made sure to get therapy, dealing with the betrayal, the anger, and the heartbreak. It wasn't easy, but I knew I had to heal. I also started rebuilding my savings, making sure I was financially independent and investing in my future. Looking back, I learned a lot from this experience. Trust is fragile, and it can be shattered in an instant. Money, betrayal, and manipulation can turn even the strongest relationships into nightmares. But I also learned that I was stronger than I thought. I could stand up for myself, fight back, and take control of my life. Emily's bitchy attitude, her lies, her cheating, none of it defined me. I was the one who decided to walk away, rebuild, and move forward. Now I'm focusing on my kids, my career, and my own happiness. I know there will be scars, but I also know I've come out of this stronger. If there's one thing I want others to take from this, it's this: don't ever ignore the signs of betrayal. Trust your instincts, gather your proof, and don't be afraid to stand up for yourself. Because in the end, you're the only one who can truly take control of your life. And sometimes, that means walking away from everything you thought was real to find what's truly yours.